Doctor, I'd like to call on Dr. Stephanie Seneff. She's on the Eastern Seaboard. Dr. Seneff, would you explain what your PhD is in? And then I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay, well, hi, I'm Stephanie Seneff. I'm from MIT. I have a bachelor's degree from MIT in biology with a minor in nutrition. I have a PhD in computer science from MIT.
Thank you. First question, doctor. You had written the review, the glyphosate suppression of cytochrome P450 enzymes and amino acid biosynthesis by the gut microbiome, pathways to modern diseases.
That's right.
You co-authored this.
Co-authored, yes, with Anthony Samsel.
All right, thank you. We have to keep this really short, so I need short answers. Would you please explain dysbiosis, impaired sulfate transport, and suppression of the activity of various members of that particular cytochrome family of enzymes? Really short.
Okay, glyphosate messes up the gut bacteria, and it causes an overgrowth of the pathogens, which causes lots of problems, colitis and inflammatory bowel, all these kinds of problems that people are having. It depletes important micronutrients, rare minerals like cobalt and molybdenum, zinc, and manganese. These are really, really important atoms that have a major role in allowing enzymes to work properly, important enzymes. Glyphosate disrupts the synthesis of essential amino acids. These are aromatic amino acids as well as methionine. These are really, really important to the function of the body. And then it disrupts both sulfate synthesis and sulfate transport. I've identified sulfate deficiency as a key factor in autism, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. I mean, just about everything is happening today. So I think glyphosate is the most important toxic chemical in our environment today. I feel very confident that I'm right about that.
Excuse me? Yeah, thank you. And the reason why I'm letting now, because I've allowed one about the body and nutrition, even if, so I'm going to allow, that's why I allowed that question to go to you.
All right. Thank you, doctor. Because of time, I'm not going to ask you more questions, and I really appreciate the fact that you stood by all this time. It's quite late where you are right now, so I'm going to let other people ask you questions if they have any, and then I have another person.
Okay.
Any questions on, okay. Councilmember Elegant, do you have a question?
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Willie?
Good day, Doctor. One of my concerns, say with magnesium and those trace minerals, is that that depletion affects the most vulnerable populations. I mean, it just appears as if it's our children, our infants that are the most affected. Or in this county, my concern is also, say, with the Hawaiians, which tend to be affected by those type of chronic diseases, whether it's the diabetes and things that those trace minerals would help to prevent. So I know some people here said, well, look how healthy I am. I've been eating.
Margaret, can you ask her a pointed
Okay, so
question?
I just want you to comment on that and just looking at, am I off the wall? Or it doesn't seem like there are more vulnerable populations, say with youth or certain ethnic groups.
I think so. I mean, one of the issues is simply dark skin, because sunlight is a very important factor in sulfate synthesis. So with dark skin, you end up with a vitamin D deficiency, basically, to say it shortly. So that gives you extra vulnerability. Also, I think if you're on an economy budget, you're going to tend to buy more processed foods, which are depleted in nutrition. So you get these major deficiencies showing up more prevalently in people who don't have a lot of money to spend on food.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Elegant, you have a question?
Madam Chair, I just want a clarification because, as you stated before, we should stay away from the food safety.
Yeah, but we had allowed them to talk about the.
Right, I'm just saying, am I allowed to ask?
Now you can ask her what, because you opened it up earlier and I said I would have allowed it. So now what I allow, I have to allow for everybody, yeah.
Okay. I
So
just wanted
it's
to,
just about
I didn't want to
the
break
above,
any rules
So,
that you
Yeah,
established.
go ahead and ask your
Um,
question.
So, Doctor, I had a question about, you said that the glyphosate had these ramifications. Now, when it comes to what's the dose or what's the quantity, what exactly needs to occur for that to happen?
I mean, that's a good question, and I can't answer it because we have actually very poor monitoring of how much glyphosate is in the food. However, I will say, for example, that a recent practice of desiccating wheat right before the harvest or ripening sugarcane right before the harvest makes me believe that we're getting a lot more glyphosate in our food than we used to. You also have, of course, the GMO crops, the corn, the soy, the canola oil, and it's been very well documented that the usage of glyphosate has gone up quite substantially in the last 10 years as a consequence of the super weeds that are developing because of those crops. So Europe has done measures of glyphosate in urine and has found 43% of the people they measured across multiple countries in Europe tested positive for glyphosate in the urine. These were people living in the city who would not have been expected to be exposed through agriculture.
Thank you.
So it's in the food, but it's not being tested because it's considered to be perfectly safe.
Okay, so thank you for and what we're doing, Doctor, just, I've asked them to ask pointed questions, and as much as possible for the person being called up to give a short answer to their question, because we're not allowing testimony. So I don't want it to turn into testimony, so thank you, though. Councilmember Elegant, you still have the floor?
Doctor, I have more questions for you, and I wanted to also ask, did you, in your research, did you look into, you said you mentioned the GMO crops. Did you also look into glyphosate in conventional farming?
I mean, it's used when it isn't GMO, for example, on wheat and on sugar cane. I think it's bad there too, but I think that when you look at the correlations, there's remarkable correlations between the use of GMO and the rates of autism in America, also of obesity and diabetes and Alzheimer's. All of these things correlate very, very strongly with the use of glyphosate on GMO, corn and soy specifically on that.
So what I'm hearing is that since there's been a rise of GMO, there's been also a rise of autism.
Yes.
And there's no other variables in that, just because.
Well, there are obviously many other variables in autism, but the correlation between the GMO, both the GMO crop development and the glyphosate usage on GMO are extremely strongly correlated with the autism as measured in the school system. It's a remarkable, I have never seen such a good correlation coefficient as you see between those two things. Correlation does not necessarily mean causation, but in this case, I think it's extremely striking.
So what I'm hearing is that it's glyphosate that you're really concerned about.
Yes.
Whether that's spray on conventional or GM crops.
That's right.
Okay. So I just wanted to really understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Councilmember Willie?
Do you believe that it's adequate to just prohibit experimental GMO crops versus a broader prohibition against the spread of GMO crops, regardless of whether they're experimental or, not experimental? Do you think
I'm not sure I got that question. How do I feel about GMO regardless of whether it's experimental? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, do you think it's adequate for us to just prohibit experimental GMO?
I believe that the GMOs that are specifically engineered to have resistance to pesticides, to herbicides in particular, starting with glyphosate, I think they're probably developing resistance to dicamba and 2,4-D and all the other ones, atrazine. I think that once you have multiple resistance, which is what they're working on, glyphosate plus, I would call it, I think it's going to be extremely damaging to our health because glyphosate disrupts your ability to metabolize and detoxify other environmental chemicals.
Okay,
So the
so
combination is going to be, I think,
I
especially
think-
bad.
So,
Look forward.
in your opinion, regardless of whether it's been designated as experimental or non-experimental, the increased use of GMO crops and the associated pesticides should be eliminated, should be prohibited.
I believe so. I think eventually the only solution that's actually going to work in the long run is to go organic. I think that we need to really have a surge in the growth of organic products. That's the only way we're going to get out of the situation that we're in right now, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. There's no more questions, but did you have one more question for her?
No, I have a question
No,
for you.
okay. So, thank you very, very much for.
Thank you. I'm sorry about the
For waiting.
technology problems, but
No problem.
at least it finally worked, so
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Ford still has
Thank
the
you.
floor.
Dr. Renee Dufault.